Hi, year 13. Obviously by now you figured out I'm not in this week. Sorry about that, but I'm going to try and make it a productive week for you nonetheless. I've set you a couple of tasks already on Firefly, and just keep an eye on that, and I'll keep updated with that from now on. First of all, well done with the cell division tests. I think actually they've been brilliant. I put the marks on Firefly, and I was actually really pleased with them. On a whole, most boys within the class have tried really hard with that, and I think a special credit has to go to anybody who got above 75% in that test. It was really, really obvious that those boys who were getting over 75% had really thoroughly revised, were able to apply their knowledge, and were able to use the key terms and phrases, so that was brilliant. Special word has to go to Joseph, who got 100%, which is just actually amazing in that test, and I couldn't actually find fault with it, so well done, Joseph. I have set you a task to go and collect your circulation books from my desk, and also a mammalian transport question booklet as well, which we'll work on over the next couple of weeks. The first task for you to do then, or the next task, second task, was for you to look at the QR code on page 2, just to give you a short overview of the heart and how it works, and then try and label the heart on page 2. So this PowerPoint might help you come across some of it. Some of it you will have come across at GCSE, but just help you point a few parts out. So the structure of the heart, as you can see, the heart is a large organ within our bodies. You should remember from GCSE that it has 4 different chambers, and that the left side of the heart is thicker in the wall to the right hand side of the heart, because it has to pump blood further than the right hand side. The other thing to remember is that basically what you're looking at is kind of a mirror image of where it should be, and it's almost as if you've taken the heart in front of you and placed it up towards you to try and figure out which side is which. So try and get used to that, and try not to get confused by the sides, but we'll go over that a little bit more when I'm in class. So right atrium, you should have been able to label it okay. Blood is brought back to the heart into the right atrium, and it always comes in as deoxygenated blood into this particular chamber. The blood will come through the vena cava into this heart chamber, and it will fill up really well before it moves into the next chamber, which is the right ventricle. So it goes into right atrium, then right ventricle. Blood is then pumped from the right ventricle to the lungs, where it gathers oxygen, and all the hemoglobin gets totally saturated by oxygen, and then it comes back into the heart again to the left atrium from the lungs. Goes from the left atrium to the lungs, and then into the left ventricle. So even at this point, you should be remembering from GCSE that the heart carries out what is known as double circulation, and that means that each milliliter of blood that you have within your body goes through the heart twice. So every single milliliter of blood goes through the right hand side of the heart, and then it goes through the left hand side of the heart after picking up the oxygen in the blood. We then have the aorta, which is a massive blood vessel that we'll come across later on as well, which leaves the left ventricle, and it carries the blood to either the top part of the body, and that's why it has the 3 little chambers leaving out at the top of the aorta, the aortic arch that is known as, or it goes to the rest of the body right down to your toes, and it feeds off from the aorta to all the main organs within your body. So it's a really important blood vessel, really important artery. You maybe remember from GCSE that all arteries carry blood away from the heart. So artery begins with the letter A, so does the word away. So they all carry blood away from the heart, and then against that, the veins always carry blood to the heart. And in the majority of cases, veins therefore carry deoxygenated blood, and in the majority of cases, the arteries always carry oxygenated blood. However, the pulmonary artery is the only artery in the body that carries deoxygenated blood. So if you think about this, it's carrying the blood from the right ventricle. It says it wrong in this particular slide. So blood leaves the right ventricle and it goes to the pulmonary artery to the lungs. And whenever it goes to the lungs, it picks up the oxygen and then brings it back via the pulmonary vein, which is the only vein in the body which carries the oxygenated blood. The pulmonary vein, or the pulmonary valve, is also known as the semilunar valve. So they are, you find the semilunar valves going out into the pulmonary artery, but also going out into the aorta. So the valves basically are there to prevent backflow of blood flowing backwards into the ventricles again. So it's important that they're present. You also have valves that break the atrium into the ventricle. And on the right hand side of the heart, you have a tricuspid valve, and it's so called because it has 3 different sections to it. The tricuspid valve has an R in it, and that is how I always remember that it's on the right hand side of the heart. And basically it is controlled by opening and closing by the different components of the heart that we'll talk about in a little minute. The septum basically keeps the 2 sides of the heart separate from each other, and in most cases it will kind of ensure that the deoxygenated blood in the right hand ventricle doesn't mix with the oxygenated blood in the left ventricle and cause any issues. When you are in the womb, your septum actually has a hole in it, and you don't even go to your lungs because your lungs aren't fully functional until you actually are born. So what happens as soon as you're born is that hole in the septum covers up. But in some people that doesn't happen, and that is known as having a hole in the heart, and they have to have surgical operations to try and correct that over their life. If you do have a hole in the heart, it means that there's an inefficiency of blood transfer. So the deoxygenated blood is mixing with the oxygenated blood, and the rest of your body going through the aorta, all the blood is not being carried far enough away. So please be aware of that being an issue. The bicuspid valve, now I've tried to correct this, but they've got a lock on it. So the bicuspid valve, and so I'd like you to ensure that it's bicuspid in your books, is on the left hand side, and it is the valve that breaks between the atrium and the ventricles. So the tricuspid valve and the bicuspid valves are also more commonly known as atrioventricular valves because they break between the atrium and the ventricles. They are controlled in their opening and closing by these strings or fibres which are called chordae tendineae. And the chordae tendineae are commonly referred to as heartstrings, and they basically are really, really strong fibres that prevent the valve from opening or blowing backwards under considerable pressure that the ventricle is going to pass on to it. And the papillary muscle, which is attached to the chordae tendineae, is a little muscle that contracts and relaxes and allows that chordae tendineae to pull down and open the valves, or to relax and to close the valves. So that is pretty much a very, very, very brief overview of the heart, and hopefully that will have helped you label some of the different aspects in page 2 and ensure that you're correct in them. Page 3 and 4 I'm actually going to leave till I'm in class again, because I think the cardiac cycle and looking at diastole, systole, etc. is a little bit more difficult, and I would prefer to do that whenever I'm back in class. So what we're going to look at over the next lesson, we're going to skip a few pages, and we're actually going to go in our books to page 11, 12 and 13. So I will send you a short video like this again for 11, 12 and 13. And then, all being well, next time I see you, I will be in class. Okay, take care. Thanks.